Welcome to another Samso Insight, where we talk to industry and we talk to people who have new concepts, new ideas, whether it's in the mining industry or other industries. Today I've got Invicta Agency here with me, Ali Raza. He's the CEO and director of the company. Invicta is a digital marketing consulting firm. They deal with content marketing, SEOs, Google Ads, CRMs. So I could go on with the list, but Ali, welcome to Samso Insights.
Thank you for having me, Noel.
Thank you for giving us your time. Look, digital marketing is the marketing in our business world, as I think, in my opinion. Maybe just give us an intro about yourself and Invicta, and let's have a chat.
Yeah, sure. So, Noel, as you know, I come from a long line of business development and marketing experiences over the years. So, I fell into a number of digital marketing agencies some 8-9 years ago after I'd spent a bit of time over my career working in business development roles, marketing roles, building businesses. And one of the first things that I recognized at the time was that there was a big disconnect between commercial strategy, marketing, and sales strategies. So the way that organizations, and really organizations in any industry for that matter, they approach what they do, what they sell, how they promote that to the market. And I'll just say that every single business or organization is promoting something to the market. What I found was that the way people promoted themselves to the market was often in misalignment. Teams, sales, strategy, marketing teams were in misalignment. So a few years ago, I founded Invicta Agency with the sole mission of enabling business growth. And the way that we do that is help organizations promote what they do in a way that's effective and scalable to drive revenue and brand growth. Now that can mean different things for different people. Revenue is one measure of growth or success for some people, and for others it's, particularly in your space, it's market value, it's sentiment. When we work with a not-for-profit, they want to raise funds. It's a different kind of revenue growth, if you'd like to call it. But essentially, organizations have objectives, and many of those objectives are on the other side of a sale. Whatever it is that you're selling, whether it's a story, message, you want to raise funds, you need to raise your market value, it's all on the other side of a sale, right? So what we do at Invicta is design strategies for people to be able to promote what they do in an effective way through digital channels, so that it's a scalable activity. And we've been doing this. I've been at the helm of the company for the last 5 years or so, and we've been doing this for businesses in many, many different industries, all kinds of shapes and sizes, people that are starting up to people that are doing $500 million in revenue. So I've worked in construction, equipment, minerals and resources. We've worked with people selling doors and windows and clothes and food, and you name it. There's no end to what kind of space you can apply these principles to, but that's essentially what our sole mission is.
When we talk about digital marketing, especially for the small cap mineral industry that I sort of live in,
Yep.
The concept is always been about the Twitter, the LinkedIn, and they, in a lot of respect, they don't even reach to Instagram. Everything else tends to hang around those two platforms, Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell us, these platforms are effectively, we call them social media. Everything's, really about that. So is there a platform that works for one industry or all industry, or what's the magic formula?
Sure. I'm going to wind back a little bit, right? So in order to understand what we should be using in our organizations, first we have to appreciate what marketing or marketing strategy is really meant to be, right? The platforms you're outlining, they are what we call channels. They're channels to reach people, but in an isolated environment, they're just that. They're just a channel to reach someone. How are you going to reach them inside that channel? What are you going to say to them when you get to them? The reality is, most organizations can use any channel to drive some business objective of theirs if they have the right strategy behind it. So then the question really is, what is the strategy? What should the strategy look like? And to answer that, you've just got to consider what marketing was always supposed to be about, and what we've done since the dawn of time When you operate a business, you run an organization, the role of marketing as a function, or your role as a leader, is to identify who you're selling to or who you're promoting yourself to, what's important to them, where they hang out, how they behave where they hang out, and then how you're going to serve that person's attention in that particular scenario, right? And what am I describing there? Just what I think is just common sense principles. It's like, I have something to offer, I have something to say, I need to make sure that I say it to the right person in the right place at the right time. And then what the question you ask is around the platforms, right? So whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, even TikTok, which people have perceived for being a platform that young kids just do dances on, has become so much more than just that. There's actually a lot of business being conducted on TikTok, believe it or not. And the thing we need to appreciate is the role that each platform can play in your strategy. TikTok, for example, is a platform that offers very short form, often entertaining snippets of content, but the short form nature is now starting to transfer over to some educational or thought leadership type pieces of content. So there's a lot of business influencers and personalities on there now that are actually getting a lot of reach for their content and the things they've always been saying now on the TikTok platform. LinkedIn. We know that LinkedIn is a platform that is used more on desktop than other platforms. There's still a fair split of mobile use and desktop use, but the way people behave on LinkedIn is very different to how they behave on TikTok. So then we've got to appreciate how people are really behaving on LinkedIn, right? On LinkedIn, people want to connect, network, engage in real conversations, and have stories to follow. And in an ideal world, the brands or people they're connecting with, they want to derive some value from them. So I connect with someone on LinkedIn, or I engage with them because I feel there's some fair exchange of value going on, right? So we're an organization, especially if we talk, small cap mining companies, where an organization should be putting their attention and focus. Look, if I was to pick a platform, LinkedIn, for obvious reasons, would take a fairly high position on my list of priorities. But rather than thinking which platform we should end up on, the first question to ask is, what are we going to do on that platform? What can we do on each platform? Who can we reach? Why do we believe we can reach these people? What can we say to them when we get to them? How much effort will it take to get to them? When it comes to small cap mining companies, right, the majority of the people that I've sat with, and I'm going to call it as bluntly as I can, majority of people I've sat with seem to believe that their marketing strategy or their promotional strategy or their IR strategy is one webinar a year, a handful of Twitter posts, and one LinkedIn post every 4 weeks. Right? You're not going to get any cut through with that. That's the bottom line. In the sea of all the noise and all the things you're competing with for attention, you will not get any cut through with that. So the first thing is appreciating what frequency we need on the platforms. A platform like LinkedIn, it used to have a lot of what we call organic reach, so you could post things and a lot of your following would see those things. That reach is reducing, right? So as platforms evolve, they require more and more attention from us. They require more and more engagement from us, more and more input from us. So if I'm going to select LinkedIn as a platform, as an organization, I need to understand how often will I need to share content on there? What should I share on there? How will I build my community? Is it likely that I'm going to stand out in my particular niche? What I will point out is that particularly in the small caps space, if you compare it to like the influencers in the tech industry, the influencers in that space are very, very mature, digitally mature. In this space, the level of maturity is not there yet. So your competition often isn't as fierce as some of the other spaces are dealing with. So you have an opportunity to capitalize on that. And that's the way you would go about picking platforms. You would need to appreciate what each one does, what kind of effort it will require, and then run a prioritization strategy. And then, as far as, like you mentioned, Twitter, right? Twitter also has a place. But what do people use Twitter for? Quick, snappy updates, right? It's the place that I feel I can get, like if I'm following a brand or an individual, I can get the brunt of what I need to know in a couple of lines, right? So then you can, what you also need to think about is how can I move influence between platforms? So if I've built up a following on LinkedIn, what I should be doing is letting them know, these 3,000 odd people I now connect with, tell them, hey, if what I've been saying interests you, just know that I'm going to be doing day-to-day updates on the stuff you need to know right now on my Twitter feed. Follow me over there. And then you kind of bounce those people around.
So you're using them together as opposed to individual,
Correct.
random sort of pot shots.
Yeah, the biggest mistake we see when it comes to building community and profile through content networks is taking one thing you produce and putting the same thing on every platform. Every platform's different, and you have to appreciate it for the role it's supposed to play.
And I think one of the things, although I know because you're in that marketing game, you say it, and like we in our industry, we just say certain things and we think everybody sort of gets it.
Yeah.
But I think the missing point is that it's the content you need to create for each platform. And that's what you're referring to, like strategy and how you react is.
Correct.
You're going to create this kind of content. But
Yep.
and in some ways, content is king, right?
Yep.
And content comes in many forms. Comes in words,
Yep.
comes in videos, comes in photos or
Yep.
images,
Yep.
kind of stuff, right? That's
Yep.
what you're referring to, right?
Absolutely. So content is anything anyone can engage with. That's articles, posts, audio, video, webinars, even events. I'll go so far as calling content. If you are out and about meeting people, recording that as a video, if there's a valuable conversation there, and sharing that with others, that's content. Anything someone can engage with that might hold value for them, it's either entertaining, engaging, informational, that's content.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, I mean, I'm using my industry partly because, and with what Samso does is,
Yeah.
people always say, oh, what's your viewership and what's this, but they forget that the content you're creating is the most important part, and
Yep.
then you got to use that to fit your strategy in one of these platforms because that's your
Yep.
your channels, as you say, right?
Yep.
We don't put stuff on billboards anymore. We don't put
Yep.
stuff on newspapers anymore. We go to Twitter, Instagram, TikTok.
Yep.
You know?
Correct.
Yeah.
Look, the shortfall, I'd have to say the biggest shortfall with any content creation activity or many content creation activities that I come across is that it's created out of your ego. You're creating content to serve your objective or your purpose. It's not actually being created to serve someone else. And you need a fair balance of promotional content and content that serves people. But the most effective strategies we see in the world, irrespective of industry, size, organization, is those that serve a particular audience. If my audience is retail investors, how is the content that I'm creating serving them? If one of my stakeholders is the public that believes in tin or lithium mining, how am I serving that particular audience? And providing a company update every 3 weeks or providing a financial update, that's obviously things that people want to know about, and the public needs to know it. So we don't negate that. But if that's your only content, then you are one in a sea of many.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Which takes us to what we've been talking about is really about branding, right? No two ways about it. It's what we're saying is being engaged by people. People seeing you is we're actually creating a brand. We want them to follow that brand.
Yep.
So in your opinion, how important is that? So is it more relevant today, less relevant? How does that sit in amongst all the industry that you worked with?
Yeah. Branding is the cornerstone of any successful business. And unfortunately, branding often is misconceived as the thing you do when you need a new logo or some business cards, right? But branding in its truest sense is so much deeper than that. That's not branding at all, in fact. That's some promotional assets, right? Branding at its core is your identity, it's your story, and it's your positioning to the market. It's what you want to say, who you want to appeal to, and how you want that to come across. That then feeds into everything else that we do, all the promotional activities, all the distribution activities, all the communication activities. I'd even go so far as to say branding actually then drives your entire organization. It drives your commercial strategy. Right? If my objective is to find minerals, and that's it, then my branding can only take me so far, right? Because I'm the same as everyone else. If I'm finding minerals for a particular reason, and I've met many people that are doing that, they are in that pursuit because that particular mineral has some connection to their past experiences or where they believe the future is going for certain industries. we could be talking about future industries or effect it will have on innovation in the world, or the effect we have on communities. That's a story I can connect with. That's a story that makes sense to me. Now, perhaps, one institutional investor or one sophisticated investor doesn't care about that story, and that's okay. Like, it's not a one size fits all, but ultimately the thing we have to recognize is that if we're building an organization, there's a group of people we need to appeal to, and there's often multiple groups, and there's a story we want them to connect with, there's a respect we want them to have for us, there's a message we want to communicate to them. And whether you're doing that through a group of mates who are stockbrokers, or you're doing it to the mass market because you want a mass profile, irrespective, you're crafting a profile, you're crafting your image. Anyone who's a professional, and especially an esteemed or successful professional, has spent a lifetime building their personal brand, right? You don't get to where you are without paying due attention to how you're going to come across and how you drive yourself up, and the organization's much the same. If you don't pay due care to your brand, or you don't promote it, you don't craft the story, it doesn't always mean you'll be unsuccessful. But the recognition that we need to make here is that by having a better profile, by having more respect in the audience you want to deal with, you make your job a million times easier. And I'd be amiss to find anyone that can dispute that, right? So,
okay. So this next question, maybe you need a bit of time to have a think about. So,
Yep.
Using the example of the small cap mining exploration
Yep.
industry, you got, so from an investor point of view, or from a seasoned investor of this industry, we see things like, okay, there are companies that say, let's just join the club. I'm talking about the ASX.
Yep.
And then we got this story, join the club, and we're going to give a few shots at the current projects that we have, and then we're going to go with it. And but our main aim is we're going to be constantly looking for value-adding projects to acquire. Then you got the guys that got a real story. They're on there, and they're following the strategy. And then they got the established guys. Now, using the branding concept, right? Is there a sector where you would say less relevant to have branding as your focus, etc.? How do you attack that?
As an outside of mining?
Yeah, well, from your industry, and you pitch, or you're sitting and thinking, is there a sector that you say, we don't branding is probably not important here, maybe, or is branding really on every sector that I've just mentioned?
Any business that's ever been established for any purpose has invested in their brand. Whether you're thinking about it when you start the business, or you do some conscious work on it after the business is running, or the organization's scale to a multi-billion-dollar valuation, right? We think about a brand. And this is what I meant earlier when I said a brand is not your logo and your business card and just one formal exercise to check off with the board or the marketing team every couple of years. The brand is what you feel, what you think, who you want to appeal to, and how you communicate all of that. There's different layers to that. And that identity piece and how you want people to perceive you, I can't think of a single business or industry that's not important to. Even if it means that the brand you develop isn't being marketed across billboards and the mass media and all over social media, even if it's just two people having a conversation, when you step in a room with someone for a negotiation, tell me you don't want them to have a certain respect for you, right? You can't. You can't, because you want to walk, any transaction you walk into, any market engagement you execute, you're hoping for a certain image to be established of you. And that's what your brand helps you achieve. And if we, the mining and small caps industry in particular, and I think this also applies to, I've talked to a lot of people in the professional services spaces who've often developed their position in the market either through like sheer grit over 10, 20 years and built relationships and networks and delivered quality work, or they started a firm early on and then they acquired other firms and they brought people together. But I have had too many conversations where people go in believing, because they've been supported through their experience and hard work, and they've been able to build either themselves or their businesses, they go in believing that branding is not required, right? But that entire time, they've been branding themselves. And it's just a matter of recognizing what that actually means. So no, there's absolutely no one that should not be paying really conscious attention to this. It's absolutely critical.
Okay. When I start at Samso, when I do my pitch, everyone talks about viewership, as I mentioned to you before.
Yeah.
How relevant or irrelevant is viewership as we move? Obviously there's the whole game of targeting, retargeting, all this kind of stuff, right? But the baby step, someone goes, I put my content out and then only 5 people watched it, or 500, 5,000. How relevant is those numbers, in your opinion?
Yeah. Look, I'm a quantitatively minded guy, so numbers are always important to me. However, in our space, we also refer to some of these numbers as what we call vanity metrics. In the wrong setting, they are vanity metrics. They are to appease yourself. In the right context, they have relevance. So I'll cover both areas off, right? If you are simply married to the numbers and you're measuring your success based on whether they're high or low or left or right, then it's a vanity metric. There's no meaning attached to it. And we know data without context it's not intelligence, it's just information. It's just a handful of numbers on a page. And it's much the same here. If we attach meaning to it and it feeds into a broader strategy, then it can have real value. Now, specific examples of that, right? My encouragement to anyone, especially in this particular space, that's looking to embark on an exercise of promoting themselves, crafting a story, maybe delivering content, is to first of all forget about the views, forget about the simple metrics, and think about what they're saying, why they're saying it, who they're saying it to, and whether it's getting through to the right types of people, right? And then second, look at the numbers. First, you focus on the foundation, then you focus on the distribution, right? We get the foundation right, we can amplify the distribution, especially, this is the beauty of the digital platforms. You get the foundation right, the distribution with the right support and help becomes relatively easy. If we put out a piece of content today, let's say, Ali and Noel put a video up today and it starts to get a bunch of engagement, people really like what we've said, and they took value from it, they will tell us they've taken value. It could have 100 views and 5 comments will validate it. They'll go, oh, we love this stuff. In today's day and age, no one has the excuse that they can't get enough viewers or traffic anymore. And I'll tell you why. Because any attention you want from your target audience, I'd say 99% of the people you want to talk to, you can reach online with advertising. All of the platforms give you the ability to reach the types of audiences you want, whether that's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google, Reddit. Now, if you publish something and it doesn't get a lot of views and it doesn't reach people straight away, that's okay. It's all right, because you can pay for the viewership, right? You can pay for the viewership, but if you pay for viewership and the message you have to offer, the foundation is not strong, it's not solid, then that viewership won't do anything. I can show it to 1 million people, might actually have a counter effect on it, might go the other way. So viewership is important. Any other metrics that you see in the digital space, and in fact, whether that's digital or traditional mediums, even newspapers and billboards and radio, impressions and views and these types of things, they can be vanity metrics with the wrong context. They can be very helpful with the right context. So if we know what we're saying is valuable and we've crafted a good story and we've had enough feedback from the market, and then we promote it and then we get viewership, that's where the magic happens. But to close that piece out, I'll share just one example of my own experience, and that I won't name the specific organization, but I can attribute multiple 6 figures in revenue from one organization to a single message exchanged on LinkedIn. Right, so a conversation, a single message exchanged through a post can be attributed, and this is the stuff I can attribute, because a lot of things you can't attribute immediately. So I often like to refer back to this story. Multiple 6 figures in revenue, a long-standing relationship with a company that's done phenomenal things, and much more equity that's come out of it, all attributed back to a single post and a single message exchanged. So you can't discount the power of one, but once we get the foundation right, we can multiply it to the many.
And touching on that thing, that single message, single post. It's do people view that as accidental, or is that a planned thing? Or because a lot of marketing is trial and error, right?
Yeah.
You put this out, no,
Yeah.
blue doesn't work, red works,
Yeah.
or red plus brown works better.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it's the multiple, or the variables coming together.
Correct.
As we say, all the ducks in line kind of
That's
concept,
right.
right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So moving to the next step, we sort of talking about. I mean, digital marketing 101, viewership, as you just described, it's important, but depends how you look at it. But what the next step allows, what makes that number useful is the concept of targeting and retargeting those numbers, right? Can you sort of talk to us about that?
Yeah, sure. So, as an organization, when we look to appeal to an audience, build a market profile, we want to sell something, promote something, engage them in something, there are stages of attention that we go through with people, right? So if I show you something, but we haven't talked yet, that's a stage of attention. I got your attention, you saw what I had to say, but we've got nothing to do with each other. You might remember me later on, but that's about as far as we've gone right now. We basically cross paths in the street, and you recognize my face. You see me for the good-looking guy that I am, and you go, I'm going to remember that guy, right? But that's it, no more. And that, in the marketing context, we call awareness. And what a lot of people are doing, especially in this space, my experience with mining and small caps particularly has been that there's a lot of awareness-type exercises being focused on. Now, the reality is that you've got, if you were to think about your marketing or IR or business development function as an engine, within that engine, there are actually 5 components you require, right? And what we've just spoken about is just one. And that's where people cap the process off. When we develop growth engines for organizations, again, irrespective of any industry they're in, we see their engine as being made up of 5 components. And that's, the components are called attract, capture, build, convert, amplify. And each function represents a stage of attention. I got your attention. Well, the attention will be of no use unless I can capture it somewhere and I can actually continue the conversation, right? Otherwise we cross paths and we never see each other. If I do capture your attention and now I have a way to talk to you, well, now I need a way to build a relationship with you. How are you going to appreciate me for what I do, right? Right, now, if I've built a relationship with you, now I need something to offer you. Perhaps the offer in this case is just the stock price and an opportunity
Fear of missing out on.
Fear of missing out of, something that will pay a big dividend down the line. Something that will yield a big return a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, whatever the promise is, but we need to make a promise. And then lastly, in the most effective organizations in the world, you have amplify. You have a component in your system which perpetuates all of that goodwill you've created without you needing to be there to repeat the cycle yourself. Noel goes and tells 20 of his friends that know 20 other people and have 7 really high-level contacts, and boom, the whole thing grows. But what you want to do is develop these components with as much precision as possible. So if we have 10 really strong stockbroker mates that can go and talk to a group of investors, then perhaps the convert is being managed relatively well, right? But do you have control over that? How well do you know those stockbrokers? How well do you know the investors? Is what you're offering the right thing to be offering? There are so many questions that come up, and when you develop an engine, what you want is a feedback loop. You want to understand how each activity is feeding into the next, and then you want to reiterate based on that feedback loop. So really, the power that we've got from digital platforms, to now circle back to the question you were asking, the power we've got is to move people through these stages, attract the attention of a mass group of people, exactly the types of people we want to talk to, and move them through the stages by using tools like remarketing, retargeting. So if I show you a piece of content, Noel, and there's, you've taken value from that because it's speaking about a certain mineral and the state of investment in that mineral in the current age, and you keep watching that type of content, I can actually say to LinkedIn, for example, that, hey, this person that keeps watching this type of content, because they're indicating they might be an investor, I want you to show them this other stuff now. I want you to put an ad in front of them that says, hey, are you thinking about investing in lithium or tin? Do you want the prospectus for this float that's coming up? Or do you want some updates on this particular exploration company? And do you want the updates sent to you as a text message once every week, right? See, now I've created the next level of engagement. If I've captured you that way, and we've started that relationship, we've now shaken hands, we know each other, I can use further retargeting. I can reach you again and again and again until...
Just to interrupt you, with that same, what you're saying there, when we say, okay, do you want to have a look at this? Can that approach be just putting in front, oh, by the way, look at this?
Yep.
So that subtleness is one magnitude down as opposed to saying, do you want this? It's
Yep.
like, oh, have a look at this.
Yep.
Does that work in the same way? Because sometimes people might think,
Yeah.
oh, that's too sort of in your face.
Yep.
Does
Yeah.
that subtle, lesser degree work in the same way?
Yeah, it's the key here is relevance, right? Relevance and frequency. In our industry, so in old marketing theory, there's the concept of RFM analysis, recency, frequency, and monetary analysis. And essentially what it recognizes is that the effectiveness of an organization's marketing campaign or system is dependent on the recency multiplied by the frequency multiplied by the monetary commitment of a customer. In other words, the more recently someone saw my
Recent
message,
is new.
So when I'm about to make a purchase or a decision of some kind, the more recently I saw your message multiplied by the more frequently I saw your message multiplied by the amount of money that I've invested with you previously will determine how likely I am to invest with you again. Now, I've taken that concept and I've brought it forward a couple of years to the current age, and I see the concept as being valid when you look at it as recency multiplied by frequency multiplied by impact. If you've shown someone something recently when they're thinking about making an investment, or they would make an investment, and they've seen your message frequently, but the messages you put out have impact on them. This is the key, right? If you just promote, like, hey, buy my stock, you're probably going to annoy some people. But if the things you're putting out have impact, right? At the helm of a small cap, public listed company, if I was putting out content, I would be speaking about the industry. I would be speaking about how that industry is taking a turn, how the minerals are being used in particular innovations and developments in the world. That is not going to annoy people, most people, if they are the right people. So that sort of stuff you can show very frequently, but that's the distinguishing factor. Don't harass people with promotions, but rather focus on what holds real value, right? And this takes me back to the beginning as well, where I was saying you've got to appreciate who you're talking to and what you're saying, and you need to make sure that the experiences you offer are really relevant. And it's no different from, like, if you showed up to a conference and you ran up to 20 different people and said, want to buy my stock, right? What's the response you're going to get?
And also, in some ways, the content you make to narrate that story is very important too.
Yeah.
As opposed to just flicking someone that says, oh, there's a shortage of copper, nickel, lithium, whatever, without relevant. I mean, to some degree, that's good, but the degree that you're talking about, the impact, is creating that content to have some relevancy to your own story, which relates
Correct.
to your branding, right? That's what
That's
you're
right.
talking about, yeah?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a scenario, let's throw a long-winded question to you in terms
Sure.
of digital marketing. It's just a word that people throw around in concept. So in a very short way, if we had a cafe at the vet, so it's very small, and then you got a large private engineering firm, mining services firm, or something like that, and then you have the ASX, which is call it the top of the summit or whatever. Then you have the small cap, large cap. How do you sort of, in a ballpark, reply to deal with that whole ball?
Yep. So how how we would build a strategy
Yeah.
for those three groups, right?
Because the small cafes is not going to be
Yeah.
lesser of a conversation in some
Yep.
ways,
Yep.
if I'm correct.
Okay, interestingly enough, the formula is the same for all of them. It's exactly the same, believe it or not. The cafe, the small cafe, let's say the cafe is out in Mosman Park, little suburban area, away from the offices and the shops. The first thing I would do is recognize who I'm expecting to visit that cafe, right? Perhaps it's local retirees, some young professionals in the area, perhaps young mothers, and I would understand who is currently showing up, who could show up, who's in the area. Then I would think about what is important to them. What kind of food do they like? What kind of experience do they like? What kind of music do they like in the space? What kind of community am I dealing with? Then I would think about where these people hang out. They hang out in local groups on Facebook. They hang out in other social media channels. They read certain publications, local publications. They connect with local schools, newsletters. I mean, really, I'd identify all the different places these people are hanging out. Then I would give thought to what will appeal to them. So I've just thought about what was important to them. How can I deliver that in a way that's appealing to them? And then that would be translated in the form of content. Perhaps I offer a video series on the local area, right? So as a cafe, I might create a series on a life, an example of lives in Mosman Park, residents of Mosman Park, right? I'll follow 30 people around, one a day for 30 days, and they'll then share those stories with their friends and groups, and then the cycle sort of continues. And then I ensure that when people get to the place, that they get what they expected. They get the same friendliness, they get the same environment, and then all of that is promoted online, and the cycle just kind of feeds into itself. Right? So that's a very high-level strategy for the cafe. Now let's jump over. You said the small caps next.
We can jump to the top spectrum, I guess.
Sure. Well, let's go through the stages actually.
Yeah.
They're two distinct groups, right? The small caps and then the sort of the large operators. So let's take the small caps. Most of the small caps, they're looking for something. They're exploring for something, right? So same story. First, I would ask, okay, who is it that we need to appeal to? The stakeholders are first and foremost investors, and the different types of investors. I'm looking sophisticated. I'm looking at maybe in some cases some institutional, but unlikely. I'm talking retail, mum and dad. I'm talking mid-level sophistication. Let's use that classification. What's important to these people? So I'd profile each of these individuals. Some of them will invest in things people just talk about, right? And I'd even go so far as to argue that's probably most of them, right? But especially the retail mum and dad investors, they won't conduct often the same level of analysis that you would at a large investment firm. So for them, perhaps the profile, the outlook is very important. For the sophisticated investors, perhaps it's who else is involved in this project, right? So a level of analysis and who else is involved. And perhaps it's perception of that industry or that particular mineral. Now, I'm working with a few unknowns here. But ultimately, the people that are investing in what you do are essentially, they're asking the question. The promise you're giving to them is the opportunity of generating a yield because you'll find something, correct? I'm looking for something. So what you need to communicate to them is whether you are capable of finding something and how likely you are to find something, right? And this goes back to the example of the cafe. Like, what's important to these people? What do they want? These people want to know that you're capable of finding something and you are likely to find something. Now, I can't guarantee you that, can I? Anyone who guarantees that is, I'm sure they'd be contradicting some regulations there. What I can do is make you feel and understand why I'm on the right path. Now, belief. Yeah. It's about belief. Now, if we go back to the concept of recency, frequency, impact, one way that I can try and make you believe is just say, hey, I'm looking for something and I hope to find some minerals, and I'm a geologist, and trust me, I'll find some minerals, right? And if you've got a good trusting group of people, sure, they'll hand you some capital, but if the question is about how we raise the profile, how we establish that trust, so the way you would go about that is by appreciating that the people want to believe you have the ability to find something, and you are likely to find something. And some examples of things you could create are, and I don't know the scientific processes or the systems, but perhaps there is some kind of model, interactive model, digital model that can be created. It can sit on your website, a digital platform that shows the effectiveness of your process, right? Shows the impact of your process, shows your progress in that process, more so than you would find in an annual report or a statement, right? It actually encourages people to engage with what you do. Perhaps you can tone down the complexity of the science behind what you're communicating and make it an asset that can be engaged by the broader market. Perhaps if we know that retail investors are going to be involved in this thing, well, let's make the analysis easy for them, right? If I was marketing a cafe and I know that it's really difficult for me to walk in the cafe as soon as you step in because there's tables like scrambled everywhere, I'd go clean up the cafe. In this particular instance, what we want is for people to believe that we're going to find something and that we are good at finding something, so we can create things that make their experience easier, create interactive animated tools online that explain the process to people, explain to them why it's an effective process, give them, some of your content could be a series of stories about geologists or people that work in the company. Like, why is Noel good at what he does? You'd be surprised at what you can achieve with someone just connecting with you on a personal level, right? So strategically, again, I've got to go back to the foundation. I can tell you to go on LinkedIn and Twitter and all of that. You won't get very far if that's your whole play. But we've recognized who we're trying to talk to, what might be important to them, how we might need to appeal to them, and then what we have to offer to them, right? And what we have to offer just within our existing base, even if all we're doing is drilling holes in a spot, well, what do we have to offer? Well, we've got professionals, or at least I hope, if you've taken that much capital and you're drilling holes, you've got professionals. We've got a story. We've got a likelihood of finding something. We've got a way that we're trying to find something. And all of that can be communicated in a way or in an experience that people enjoy, that people can relate to. That then can be delivered online, and that can be scaled to the masses. If you gave me an asset, a content or a piece of content or a tool that showed me how far along you were in your process of drilling and the performance and the likelihood of you finding something, and it was really engaging, like people really liked it, I could show it to groups of investors using digital platforms with a few clicks of a button, right? But then it has impact, as opposed to, if I just jumped online and said, okay, sure, like let me try and promote what you do, but all we're going to say is that, hey, we're drilling holes and we're looking for minerals. Once again, one in a sea of many. So then we sort of, let's take that same format to the large corporations. So what's the value of the larger?
Say a BHP or...
Okay, take a bit. Okay, so now...
Or a large private mining engineering firm was turning over hundreds of millions.
Great. So whether it's a BHP or hundreds of millions, now the complexity here is that you often have many different business objectives. So we'll try and pick a couple of them and sort of workshop this. But one of your biggest objectives, especially a BHP, is CSR, corporate social responsibility, and it's the impact that they have on the communities that they're involved in. It's what they do for people, how they serve them, what the people get out of their presence. Then you've got business development, plain and simple. Every business that's now in production and has a product, they need business development, right? And this actually applies to the small cap and the large caps. But if you are spending time conducting business development, either in the way of selling your product or attending conferences to garner investment and raise your profile, either way, you're selling something. So again, to my point, the strategy needs to be focused on raising your profile when you are involved in these activities. So those are some of the different groups. Now, out of those groups, let me use the same formula again. I want to serve a particular community. So my stakeholder is that community and other people that are giving their attention to that community. What's important to them? What do they want to know? What do they want to hear? How can I deliver value? What do I have to offer? And the last one, I'll really stress on this for the larger caps for a moment, right? Because often marketing is mistaken for stuff I just say to the market. It's not. I can't wrap up any story. I can't take bullshit and turn it into a message that people will respect and appreciate. Not unless, we're twisting the truth a little bit, right? So you also have to reflect on what we actually have to offer. If a BHP or if any organization is creating initiatives that drive more jobs, that preserve the environment, that get the community involved, that are serving the local children, the youth, whatever social purpose it is that they intend to serve, that can then be delivered to the right people through the right experiences. Now, that experience, again, can be delivered through content, it can be delivered through activities, through functions, that it can be promoted through digital platforms and scaled. But we take that same formula and we apply it to any and every business objective. If my objective as a larger cap is to change the market profile in certain areas and maximize my business development activities, my IR activities, then the questions I need to be asking, again, are what's important to the stakeholders? Are we appealing to institutional investors? Are we appealing to these investors? Can the retail market still have an effect on our sentiment? And the reality is you've probably got a multitude of people you want to talk to. But if we want for the institutional investors to pay attention to us, because this is a big misconception in that these activities are often limited to just day-to-day individuals. But every single person, particularly a professional, is using the internet right now, right? They're leaving a digital footprint. So if they are leaving a digital footprint, we have the ability to get their attention and say something to them. So let's say there are 4 conferences around the world, 4 investment conferences or mining industry conferences, and there are potentially 30,000 people in my total addressable market. That is stakeholders that would be that would represent some kind of influencer in the investment decision-making process. Again, I ask what's important to them, and what's important to them may be understanding how the major players in the industry are making decisions, state of market, perhaps policy decisions around the world and specific locations, innovations taking place with certain industries, and what I can create. Once again, are content pieces, but I'll go a little bit further this time. I can create perhaps white papers and webinars and even spin up events of my own and create things of engagement that these people will pay attention to, that will be relevant to them. Right? Create those things using language that represents them, a form that serves them, shows up in places that are easy for them to access. And I can scale these activities with unlimited potential online. You can pick any major investment firm in the world. You could tell me you want to target Goldman Sachs right now, right? And as long as we know what to say to investment bankers at Goldman Sachs, and it's not going to be as straightforward as just spinning up a story and dishing it out, but as long as we know what to say to them, we can start appearing in front of all those people by the end of today.
I think the key I'm hearing is there's this 3 strategies or 3 points. There's the strategy part, and they're all equally important. Then the content, which a lot of people misconceive as just putting something out.
Yep.
But that content, I think, they all string together. And then the last part is delivery, right?
Correct.
Which is what you're saying, and you can reach all those guys in Goldman Sachs, but you need the content to get their attention.
That's it.
Right? And the strategy to deliver that content, to make the content for the delivering. So I think that's I think if you look at BHP and the big companies, they don't start saying I'm a big nickel miner. They talk about safety. They talk about community.
That's right.
So that's the importance of stakeholders that you're talking about, right?
Correct. Correct.
So directing that information first, because everybody knows you make nickel, copper, whatever,
That's right.
You make glass, you are mining services, but
Yep.
you want to make sure that is the one that you feel is the most important part of your brand.
That's right.
And I think many the sort of takeaway for people is that if these guys are doing it, you should be doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the thinking.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
this is where the mining industry can learn a lot from the tech industry. That's my belief. In the tech industry, you have a product marketing field. I mean, major tech companies that are scaling at a rapid pace, and even the smaller caps in that space, they have product marketing functions. And the purpose of the product marketing function is to understand how the value of the product or what you have to offer should be communicated in the simplest language, right? And that's very different to what the product does. I mine for minerals. That's not why you invest in me, because there's lots of people that mine for minerals, that
Yeah.
explore for minerals, right?
Yeah.
I sell iron ore, but there are different people that sell iron ore. Why do you choose me? So what out of my product feature base, whether that's my CSR attention, whether that's my community engagement, whether that's the programs I run, whether that's talent acquisition, right? What do I offer people to come work at my company? All of these things that are taking place within a business's function, they need to be communicated through this conversation that we're having. So the content has to be a reflection of that.
Moving on from the practicality and the things, where do you see digital marketing? Is it still going to be called digital marketing? And are we talking? I mean, obviously the view is like 5 to 10 years that you do, but to add to that question is the technology and the changing and the way we engage with those technology changing by months, years? I would safely say definitely not more than years.
Yep.
But yeah, so how do you're in that industry?
Yeah.
How is that movement?
The tech industry moves very, very fast. This is really what's changed in the last 20 years. The industry is evolving at a rapid pace. We have to stay abreast of innovations and changes on a day-by-day basis. We need to ensure when we're running very active strategies, we have to ensure on a day-to-day basis, sometimes twice a day for the larger strategies that we look after, to make sure that nothing is going wrong, nothing is changing. There are no innovations we're missing, no developments that we're missing. You can have platforms announce an algorithm change, and overnight there is some shake up to the way you do things, right? So there is a burden on you to ensure you've got people around you that are connected to that space and the people within that space and understand what the impact of these different activities could be. If I advertise on LinkedIn, they might change the way that a particular delivery system works. So the audience that I thought I was delivering to is now no longer being delivered to. And maybe in the worst of cases, I don't recognize that for 3 months. So now I've spent 3 months of investment and something had changed. And I actually wasn't even reaching those people. So I can't tell whether something's effective or not because it actually didn't even reach the people. So that kind of change takes place at a rapid pace. But now, to flip that on its head, marketing has never changed in what it's supposed to do. And this has really been the tone of my conversation today. Ultimately, the channels, the platforms might change, people might change slightly in how they behave, but the fundamental rules, the things you need to ask as a leader, as a marketer, they won't change. Who am I trying to reach? Where are they hanging out? What are they doing in the place that they're hanging out? If it's LinkedIn, what do they do on that platform? How do they behave? What do I have to offer? How am I going to offer it? And are they going to pay attention to that? You take all of that, and then operationally, you need some checks and balances in place to recognize whether what you thought up here actually has been validated, and then you just repeat that feedback loop again and again. And if you have that kind of model in place, that kind of growth framework, then it really doesn't matter how much something changes. It could be TikTok today, LinkedIn tomorrow, Facebook, people are screaming Facebook is dead and all kinds of things. Reality is it doesn't matter. We, like being in the industry, we are absolutely unfazed. I particularly am completely unfazed about what may come or what will happen because the fundamentals never change. At the end of the day, we're talking to people, and this is really where most people go wrong. They forget they're talking to people. And if you walked into a room full of people and decided to drum up connections there and have conversations, I bet you for most of us, it'd be very different to how we try and do it online. And that's all you need to bring it back to. So if you ask those questions, the pace of the industry and the platforms, it's not really something that should bother you.
Look, so where is Invicta going? Well, how do you see path forward? How would is there going to be a dramatic change in how we do things? Or, as you say, steady as it goes. Really, marketing is what marketing was 2 decades away, 5 decades away.
Yeah.
Just how we implement it.
Yeah, yeah. Look, as I said, the pace is changing. The way things move in the world. I'm not saying anything of surprise here. The pace is changing a lot. Things move at a rapid speed. We live in a fast, I want it now economy, and the people making decisions more and more are now the millennials. They're the people that grew up with the smartphones, right? Grew up at the dawn of MySpace, Facebook, all the platforms that really determine how we see ourselves in the world and how we make decisions. So the rest of the world has sort of moved on. I think there's a number of industries and spaces that are still left a little behind in how they do things, and I do believe that this is one of the spaces. Minerals and resources, businesses traditionally be done a certain way, and you don't have the strain of the collective innovating. When the industry collectively is innovating, then you're kind of forced to move on as well. So you can be an early adopter, you can be a laggard, right? You can be the first one to the party and kind of own the space, or you can be the last one. People that jumped on Facebook approximately 9 years ago could jump online, post a bunch of things, and build a following of 1 million people on there. So generally what happens is when a digital platform is released, initially their objective is to get as many people indoctrinated into the platform as possible. So they reward you a lot for anything you put on there, right? As the attention increases, they then start prioritizing who they will show to people. Then the third stage of that is they start getting you to pay to buy attention. So you have to advertise to get people's attention. And Facebook is one of those platforms now where it's almost pointless trying to post stuff on there. You have to buy people's attention. It's a pay to play platform. LinkedIn is in that space, particularly in this kind of segment. We're starting to hit that threshold. It is pay to play, but it still has a lot of what we call organic reach. It's still early days. You still have an opportunity to build the following that you could do with Facebook 7-8 years ago. And that's really the change we have to recognize. As the years progress, these pockets of opportunity show up, and for a couple of years, they are a gold mine. And no pun intended. I know we're talking about mines here, but they are an absolute gold mine, right? And I built my company off the back of LinkedIn, right? No capital, no connections, no network. That's how we started up. While the platforms and these pockets of opportunity are showing promise, you should do whatever you can to capitalize on it, because that wind will pass and there'll be a new opportunity that shows up. But what I can't tell you is exactly what opportunity will show up and whether that will be beneficial for you specifically or not. But look, at a macro level, absolutely, things will change, but we can lay in comfort knowing that there will always be a way to get to people using digital channels. But there's a number of really hot opportunities right now, and once they pass, we don't know when the next one will come.
It's like when TikTok came on, great engagement, and it's now you don't. It's more about business in there now, same as Facebook was, and I guess it's in some ways even YouTube's now taken on shorts because they acknowledge that the 30-second thing is actually much better engaging than the long-winded stuff that they do. But they still work, but now you can use that to drag people to the
That's right.
to the things, right? So
Yep.
look, Ali, we've covered a fantastic amount. That's a great way to sort of conclude, but any last words for people to take away from our conversation that you can think of that we could leave with?
Absolutely. Look, bearing in mind the audience that listens in to your shows, I'll reiterate what we just spoke about. We're in a time of digital evolution where there's a golden opportunity, and I'm sitting with yourself and other people like you in this particular space where what I've seen is that opportunity is massively untapped. And right now is the time for you to be one of the first to the party. And those that are the first in the digital platforms are often 10 steps ahead. when they jump on board. So my encouragement would be that leaders in the space think about their organizations differently, recognize that we're all selling something if we're running a business, and there's no two ways about that. And the opportunity of the digital platforms is to do that at scale, a scale that's never been possible before. So that's an opportunity that should not be missed.
Okay. Nope. Fantastic. I mean, digital marketing it's effectively the marketing out there in some ways. We've gone past the, maybe the newspapers will make a comeback, but anyway, Ali, thank you for your time and
My
fantastic.
pleasure.
I hope everyone gets a gist of what's really out there. And reach out to Ali, Invicta Agency, and if not, just contact me. I'll put you in the right spot. Thank you.
Thank you.